What's up, guys? How's it going? This is Derek Neff, Savage Discipleship, where we encourage men to grow until they reach the fullness of Christ. I got a quick word for you guys today, and it's about mindset. Because so many times in like the self-defense arena, people tend to put all of their faith in like their equipment, their pistol, their red dot, their rifle, their plate carrier. They got all the equipment. They might have, some night vision goggles or something like that. And they got all this stuff and they think, because I got this stuff, if something ever happens, I'm ready. But they never take that stuff and train with that stuff and become efficient with it. How to change tactical mag changes, how to clear a jam. And not only that, but how to mitigate stress when your heart rate goes up. They don't tend to think about all those things. But if that's the way that you've viewed, or that's the way if someone's viewed self-defense, where they've put all their trust in their equipment, if something ever does go to happen, it's they're going to be in trouble. And I was reading a book called The Warrior Mindset. And one of the things I read in there was saying that they studied self-defense situations. For example, like when police officers came into a violent encounter, that they realized that their response to that event was 75% mental and 25% physical. So their mind, the mental aspect was 75% of it, while the physical was only 25%. So without you, the operator, those things, those guns, those red dots, plate carriers, whatever it is, they're just inanimate objects without you, the operator. So, and also there's a phenomenal quote that I found in that book as well, by Lieutenant Dave Grossman. And he said, "In the end, it is not about hardware, it is about software. Amateurs talk about hardware or equipment. Professionals talk about software or training and mental readiness." So you should be viewing your self-defense as a professional. You need to be thinking about mindset. One of the greatest aspects of that is thinking about how to mitigate stress, because once your heart rate goes up, you need to understand a lot of those things. Because your heart rate goes above 145, you start to lose manual dexterity. You might start to get tunnel vision. You need to understand how to mitigate all those things so you can effectively and efficiently operate your self-defense equipment whenever that time arises, if it ever does. It's like, I've been training MMA and jiu-jitsu for a while. And it's like if I go into, I don't know if you train, but if you've ever trained, you'll notice that like sometimes you might roll with a guy that's just kind of like, for lack of a better term, just kind of like dead weight. He's not really defending that well. He's just kind of rolling around, and he's not like anticipating a next move. Because a lot of like in jiu-jitsu, it's you're doing one thing to set up something else. So you notice that the guy's really not, you're able to get things pretty easily because he's just not really paying attention to what's kind of going on. And you don't want to take that same approach towards your self-defense. Like when I go into jiu-jitsu, I'm already knowing and anticipating that somebody is going to try to choke me, because that is a reality. Somebody is going to try to choke me. So I need to be on my guard, be on my defense. One of my favorite verses of all time is it's in 1 Peter chapter 1, and where it says to gird up the loins of your mind. Or another translation says, ready your minds for action. So when we, in the same aspect of self-defense, that also carries over to our spiritual walk, to our walk with God, and being a Christian. we should be readying our minds, our spiritual minds, for action. We should be girding up the loins of our mind, because unlike a physical confrontation, you might not ever get into a self-defense situation, and I pray that you don't. But every single day you wake up, you will encounter some type of spiritual defense situation where you will have to battle temptation, where you get cut off in traffic, somebody says something slick to you, and you need to not respond. You need to try to respond the way that you should, and not allow that to cause you to act out in anger or something like that. Or not even that. You might encounter a tough situation in your life. Sometimes we forget that where Jesus did say that he did promise us that we will have trouble in this life, but to take heart because he has overcome this world. So we need to ready our minds for action, being that we know that we are going to encounter tough circumstances in our life. But if we get in God's word, if we do what Jesus said in John 15 and abide in him and allow him to abide in us, he is the vine, we are the branches. Like every time I think about that terminology, I always try to focus on the point that he is the vine and we are the branches. So when you picture that, those two are intertwined. So all of the nutrients that are coming from the roots and the vine gets transferred into the branches, which then produces the fruit. So if we abide in Jesus, in God, like John 15 says, he is going to supply all of our needs. He's going to supply all of what we need to keep our mind where it needs to be. And then we will continue to put our mind. You have to continue to abide. Abiding means physically taking yourself every day, putting yourself in God's word, reading his word, praying and focusing on him. It doesn't have to be for, an hour a day. We don't need to over mystify it. Could be a few minutes, but read his word and ready your mind for action, because it's more about software than it is the hardware. Just because you got a Bible doesn't mean that you're going to be ready for whatever life throws at you. So I encourage you today, men, get in God's word, ready your mind for action, and just allow God to just produce fruit through your life. So, love you, bros. Do big things. God bless.